and welcome back to the Mecca Sports Podcast. I'm Brandon Miller.
And I'm George Gallo.
And this is the Mecca Sports Podcast. So, George, what are your thoughts on the New York Giants not making any transition tags, any regular tags before free agency this offseason?
So first, what's going on? How are you?
I'm not bad. I'm not bad.
Are you? It was an eventful weekend, I guess. Giants letting Saquon and the letting X walk. It's confused, I guess. Starting to lose trust in Schoen. I don't know. How do you not place the transition tag on X? How do you not give Saquon our only offense for 6 years straight a contract? It's sad. It really is sad.
It's very frustrating to be a Giants fan right now, especially because you have Saquon on the table, you have X on the table, and you decide to let both of them fall off the table. So now you're sitting there with no star-studded players. I besides Dexter Lawrence, I can't think of a player that I'm excited about on this team. No,
I'm not either. And the fact that Daniel Jones is still allowed to be in New York and be in New Jersey it hurts. I wouldn't want to see him. I don't want to take pictures with him. I don't want his autograph. I want him out of New York. He's the reason why we're not able to sign these guys. They're not willing to get this cash out of our pockets because they already gave Daniel Jones a big contract.
Yeah.
So he's screwing us right now.
He really is. And you think about it, he's sitting there in probably a mansion with $40 million a year coming in. At least he's going to happen this season too. He's going to get another $40 million. So you think about it, if the Giants cut him after this season, they're not taking that much of a cap penalty. But at the same time, Daniel Jones is walking away with $80 million in his pocket.
He robbed us. He robbed the New York Giants.
There's not much to really say about him.
He won a playoff game because of Saquon Barkley, and he took the money, and now look at him. Hasn't played another game as a starting caliber quarterback in this league since that playoff game, and since he got the contract too.
Right. I really do think that the only way to really buff up this team really is to kind of add free agents and draft well, which we haven't drafted well the past few years. You think about it, since Schoen's been here, he hasn't really drafted a star-studded player. You could say Deontay Banks is probably the most impressive player he's drafted. I like
Kayvon.
Kayvon's
still young.
Progressing.
I think Hyatt could be something too, but it's all prove-it guys still. They're still young guys. It's not one superstar.
And you look at teams that have had the same amount of picks as the Giants, maybe even a little bit worse picks than the Giants, like the Lions. They drafted well. You see their players are producing. Penei Sewell.
Yeah,
Jameer Gibbs.
I could go on and tell you how many times the Giants picked right before an All-Pro or someone that's made a Pro Bowl been picked.
We passed up on a lot of guys.
It's happened plenty of times. The Giants have a history of picking very badly, very, very badly. And I hate to break it to you, if we take a quarterback this year, history's going to repeat itself. Another bad drafting year.
Right. And there is one thing I will say about Dave Gettleman, which I know he is a terrible GM, but there's one thing about him. He did draft some solid players for us. He drafted Saquon Barkley. He drafted Dexter Lawrence. He drafted Andrew Thomas. All of those guys are pillars on our team. You think about it. He did draft pretty well.
How many years has he been there? And those are three guys you can name that he drafted well. How about the other guys that he drafted?
Pretty poorly, but then again, he did draft three guys. So I'm really hoping that
three guys
within these years,
well.
I really hope Schoen can find a diamond in the rough this year.
We have the picks. We have another second-round pick this year. Maybe he trades up. Maybe he moves up again in the late first round. It's going to be interesting to see what he does with all these picks. Maybe he trades one again for a player like he did last year. Obviously, it didn't work out for us. Waller almost wound up retiring this year.
He still might retire. We don't know.
$8.5 million off the books. We'll take it.
Yeah, I would not mind that. He's pretty useless to this team. I think he played in total maybe 5 full games.
Yeah. You could have left the mailbox on the field and left it open, and it would have caught more passes than Waller did last year. It's sad, but it's true. It really is true.
But, obviously some big-name free agents still, although a lot of players were tagged yesterday, some key players. But we do have some big free agents that, possibly could be wanting to join this Giants team if the bag is right.
Yeah. I think there's a few free agents. The Giants got to have a plan.
Right.
They got to have a plan if they're letting Saquon walk. If they don't want to pay X, they got to have some sort of plan in free agency where they want to spend all their money from, because they got a good amount of resources this year. So it's going to be interesting to see who they go after. It's definitely going to be the matter of who, not the matter of what price. I think they'll be looking to spend
A good buck.
and overpay some of these guys to bring them to New York for sure.
Right. And you look at the players or the positions they're targeting, you got mostly offensive line. Anywhere in the offensive line we need.
Yeah,
so
offensive line for sure.
Besides left tackle, we need that whole line figured out. I guess you could say John Michael Schmitz developing, keep him at center. We still have that.
Not yet. We wouldn't look at center yet.
We wouldn't look at center yet. But obviously, guard position is very deep need for us. Both of them.
And depth too.
Right. And it's not even just like guys that are star-studded players. You're right. We do need depth at the positions.
Badly.
So obviously guard, edge rusher. We need someone to pair with Kayvon. Obviously Aziz having injury trouble, and I don't think he'll be on this roster long term.
If there is one player I hate more than Daniel Jones on this roster, it's Aziz Ojulari. Wow. I cannot stand that guy. He's a fraud. He's hurt every single game. You can't get any chemistry going with our edge rushers and our D line in there because the guy never plays. So how are you supposed to develop a chemistry, and how is Kayvon supposed to get some more open looks and less double teams if you got bums and no one else on the other side of him because our other edge rusher can't stay on the field?
Right, and you think about it. I mean, we have Kayvon and we have Dexter Lawrence. So, I mean, realistically, we do have some players that can get to the quarterback, but we're missing that one element, that one other player that can make us a havoc on each part of the rush. You think about it. You got the left edge rusher, you got the right edge rusher, and then you got the defensive tackle running up the middle.
Yep.
If you can have guys like that that can complement each other very well, I think the Giants are going to be a very hard team to score some points on this year. Obviously, they got a new defensive coordinator, but I don't think it's going to change much within the team. I believe, obviously, if X decides to sign somewhere else, then it might change us with the passing game. But nonetheless, I do think there's some big players that we could sign in free agency that could really booster this roster a little bit. Yeah. So I want to talk about some of them with you, obviously.
Let's take a look at our list. And
we'll start on the defensive side of the ball with a guy that I really do think the Giants need to make a move at this offseason, Danielle Hunter. What are your thoughts on Danielle Hunter?
Yeah, I think Danielle Hunter is going to be a Giant at the end of this free agency period. I think the Giants are going to pay whatever they want. They're going to give him whatever contract details he's interested in. I think that's a guy coming off an 18.5 season sacks. He's great. He's only 28 years old, so he's still young. He's still got some prime years left in him. The Giants haven't spent big on an edge rusher in free agency since Olivier Vernon.
Oh, I remember that, and that didn't work out for us very well, to be honest.
So hopefully some good luck strikes this time in New York for an edge rusher coming out of free agency.
Right, and you look at the tackle position, defensive tackle-wise, I mean, you got Dexter Lawrence as your nose tackle, but obviously you need another one. So you're looking at Ashawn Robinson's probably going to walk. I don't think he's re-signing with us.
No.
He was a good player for us, don't get me wrong.
Nice depth piece.
But I do think he's going to get paid elsewhere, and I do think the Giants are going to look to make a bigger move at that position. You got two guys that are free agents. You got Christian Wilkins, who I think would fit perfectly. He played with Dexter Lawrence at Clemson. I think that's a great pairing in the middle.
Yeah.
Then you also got a guy like Chris Jones, who most likely will be off the Giants' radar. I don't think we have the money to sign a guy like Chris Jones, invest that much in that position. But nonetheless, what are your thoughts on Christian Wilkins maybe becoming a Giant? Would you like that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I would like that schematically wise, but looking into our financial and our salary cap, you don't really see a lot of teams paying two interior D linemen top money like that.
Right.
I'd like to see them address that in the draft. I think you get a guy that's younger on a cheaper deal. I'd like to see them spend that money elsewhere. Chris Jones, I could see him going to two teams. I could see him going to the Lions, and I could see him going to the Colts.
Wow.
I think those are two teams that desperately need some help inside. And Chris Jones, think of him in Detroit.
That would be a very good move for him, to be honest. I did see that Chris Jones was also linked to the Texans. I think the Texans do have a lot of money to work with.
Yeah,
they're a team that's
top 3 in the league in cap space right now.
They're very enticing. I mean, they have a lot of young players. They haven't really paid anyone crazy money yet. So, I mean, they have a lot of money to spend. And I think a vet like Chris Jones would really help a team like that out.
Could you imagine him on that D-line with Will Anderson?
That would be something.
That's scary.
That would be a scary
D-line.
And I also do think that the Texans are possibly in the draft going to address the other side of the edge rushing position if they don't address it in free agency. So you're looking at two young guys on the outside with unlimited stamina, and then you got a guy like Chris Jones just holding down the interior. I really do think that the Texans are a great destination for Chris Jones.
Yeah, me too. So let's transition to some of these offensive players. I'm going to name a few players out. You got the list in front of you too. So I'll tell you the player, and we'll both say where they're going to go or not.
Right.
So the first quarterback we got on this list is Kirk Cousins. It doesn't look like he'll be returning to Minnesota this year. So where do you think there's a team that fits with Kirk Cousins and where he is in his career?
At the end of the day, I think there's only one team that's going to be in the market for Kirk Cousins. I mean, you look at like winning wise, I think Kirk wants to win. I don't really think he's going to go chase a bag. I do think he's at the point of his career where he's exiting his prime. So I really do think, especially after injury, I think that the one team that would be a good fit for him is the Atlanta Falcons. I really do like that pick.
And I heard news where he's looking for moving into the Atlanta area. He was looking at a home.
I did see that as well.
So it's the dots are starting to align.
Right.
He'll probably be winding up in Atlanta. I don't think the new head coach was a big fan of Desmond Ridder.
Right.
His first press conference coming in, he said he wouldn't be in this position if they had some good quarterback play. So obviously, you know that
they're moving on.
Ridder is not going to be returning, but he might be there as a backup still.
Right.
Probably be there as a backup, but I think Kirk will be going to Atlanta.
Right.
Next quarterback, Baker, coming off a tremendous year in Tampa. You think he returns, or you think he's going to go elsewhere?
Well, Baker did sign a deal with the Bucs recently, so he is going to return.
Yeah.
The matter of fact is, how is he going to perform now that obviously they they re-signed Mike Evans to a big deal.
Mike Evans is back as well.
So, I mean, they're basically running it back with the same roster. Obviously, some players are leaving the team. They have Shaquille Barrett, who's a free agent on the edge, but nonetheless,
he's old and past his prime. They let him go anyway.
I do think that the Bucs are just going to remain the same. I don't think they're going to be anything crazy. I think maybe they'll be a little bit better this year with, obviously, they figured things out towards the end of the season and they got a playoff win. So, nonetheless, I do think that Baker's going to perform well again. I think Baker's a good quarterback, and I think that the Bucs are going to have a pretty good season this year.
Yeah, shitty division anyway. So whoever wins the division is a first round exit anyway.
Most of the time, that would be the case.
Cares?
But obviously, we'll move over to another running back that got released, Russell Wilson.
This is a little dark choice here, but I think he's going to go to the Jets.
Wow.
I think he's going to sign as a backup deal for Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, coming off that Achilles injury. Zach Wilson most likely will not be there. I heard that the Jets requested him. He's allowed to go
find a trade right
now. Yeah. So I could see Russ coming in on a 1-year deal. You know, maybe they'll give him a little bit more than a veteran's minimum to come in and kind of be a security blanket just in case Rodgers can't be healthy this year or gets hurt again.
Right. I think that's a really good destination for him. I do think he can be a starting quarterback still, and I think he will be, whether it's being a backup for the Jets or starting somewhere else where a low-tier team. I do think that his top destination is probably the Patriots. I do think the Patriots are in need of a quarterback, and I think they want to draft Marvin Harrison at 3. I think that if they draft a guy like Marvin Harrison and then they get a veteran like Russ, it could help the development of Marvin Harrison playing with a veteran, but also gives Russ a kind of a final shot at this in the NFL, you know?
Wow.
So I think that it's a really good pairing. I think they can invest in a guy in the draft who they really do want to draft. They don't want to force a quarterback if they don't like who the quarterback is sitting at 3. I've heard they don't like Jaden Daniels that much. So I do think it would be a good pick to draft Marvin Harrison and go sign Russell Wilson on a 2-year, 1-year deal kind of.
Yeah, and I like that. I didn't really think of New England, but I think that's a good destination.
Right. So we'll move over to another guy who kind of under the radar a little bit, Ryan Tannehill. What are your thoughts on Ryan Tannehill and what he could do for an offense?
Yeah, again, another veteran guy. He'll come in to a struggling offense and provide some help in the quarterback room. I think he's going to go to Pittsburgh.
Not a bad spot.
Pittsburgh, they have some inconsistent quarterback play. And it's not really exciting. There's not really much to say about it. Yeah, come in and kind of help them. They have Pickett.
Right.
So, you got a veteran, you got a young guy.
Probably battle it out.
Bounce back and forth. You got a battle there. Get a veteran presence to help him out in the locker room and all that stuff. So, I don't know if it's a good fit, but I think that's his ideal landing spot.
Right. I agree with that, but I want to take a little different route here. I do think that there is a spot that he could go that he would start right away and not have to worry about competition. I think that's the Denver Broncos. I think the Broncos do have a decent roster. They are in a division with the Chiefs and like the Raiders and the Chargers. So some pretty solid teams at division. I think all those teams are going to progressively get better. But I think the Broncos are going to be in need of a quarterback after releasing Russ. I don't think they're going to stick with their quarterback that they have right now. I don't think that's the best choice for them. So obviously bringing in a veteran guy who maybe can be what Russ wasn't is a good idea.
Yeah. Again, it could fit, but I don't see Tannehill starting again in this league, bearing injury or
Right.
a bad training camp performance by the other quarterback he's in competition with.
Right. So we'll move over to the running back position because obviously I think that's where the class is most deep in this free agent class. I think running back is the position where there's a lot of good guys out there. So we'll move over, obviously, guy we don't like to talk about that much because you're wearing his jersey right now, but we'll talk about Saquon Barkley. Obviously, I'll say my opinion first. I don't think he's going to be a Giant next year. I think it's over with. And I'm not going to talk too much on it because I really do think there's only 1 to 2 spots he could go. I think it's the Houston Texans or the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And I think he'll be a Texan. I think it's just the dots are lining up like you said. And I do think that being on a team like that with a lot of young players brings a veteran presence in, a guy who's been in the playoffs before. He knows what it's about. Not too much, but he gets the job done. And it'll also open up the running game for them, the passing game, all that. Yeah. But yeah, he will be a Texan.
Yeah, we got a big free agency pool this year. It's sad to see Saquon go to the Giants, but like you said, he's probably headed to Houston.
Right.
I think that's his preferred destination right now. But, you got guys like Eckler out there. You got guys like Pollard. You got Henry. So you got a nice running back free agency class. But, you got teams like Dallas, you got teams like Philly, you got teams like Houston, you got teams like Baltimore that
all need a running back.
In need of a running back and also are in competition for possibly winning the Super Bowl.
Right.
So these guys that are towards the late end of their career, other than Pollard, likely will be headed to a contender instead of a team like the Giants who are losing out on a star-studded running back, likely to settle on one of those mid-class type of guys like a Singletary or someone on that type of level.
So you obviously think about the other running backs that are free agents. There's Josh Jacobs, who I think is a very good running back. Yeah. I like him a lot. I think he runs hard. Where do you see Josh Jacobs going?
I think Josh Jacobs could end up in where the Chargers.
That's a good pick.
I think Eckler's gone. I think they're looking for a bell horse type of running back. Josh Jacobs had a great year. He led the league in rushing 2 years ago. So he's even improving on receiving the ball out of the backfield. I think the Chargers are missing an element of a hard runner on their offense, a nice ground and pound type of element to their offense that could really help out Herbert in this passing game. So I think Jacobs could come in and really give a dimension to this offense that they need.
Yeah, and you look at the Chargers offense, they do have some nice pieces on that offense. It's not like they're an offense that's just underperforming. Obviously, defensively, they were very bad this year, but nonetheless, they have new guys. They brought in Harbaugh, so hopefully, they turn things around, and Jacobs would be a nice addition to that team. But we'll talk about one more running back here because we don't want to go too in-depth to the running back class. Let's talk about DeAndre Swift. Why not?
I think Swift's a guy, he had a very good season in Philly. But I don't see him getting a starting backfield position. I could see him being in a committee somewhere, maybe somewhere like Kansas City, who could be somewhere looking to add another target at running back. Maybe Dallas. I don't see him going from the Eagles to Dallas. That would be a little crazy, but Dallas seems like they're kind of desperate for a running back right now. So maybe they would overpay for a Swift.
I got to be honest. I would like to see DeAndre Swift in a Giants uniform. I like the way he plays. Yeah. I like the way he runs. I think that he'll be affordable for us if we decide to. Right. He's young. He's still has his prime years ahead of him. And I think he hasn't really had any serious injury to the point where we have to cross him off the list. He's had injuries in the past, but nothing to the point where we can't sign him on a 1 to 2 year deal, see how it works out,
Yeah.
But we'll move over to one more position that I want to talk about. Let's talk about the cornerback position because there are some guys in free agency that, are corners and are going to be getting a decent bag, obviously. So let's talk about Stephon Gilmore. What are your thoughts on Stephon Gilmore?
I like Stephon Gilmore a lot. He had a great year in Dallas. He's going to be a guy who signs another contending team. He's at the tail end of his career, former All-Pro. I could see him, maybe he returns to Buffalo.
Not a bad spot for him to play, you know?
I could see that. Buffalo really needs help in their secondary.
Right. And I think that's a really good spot for him. I like that spot. Two teams that I see him possibly going to are the Lions. I think the Lions are a good spot.
Yeah.
I also think the Eagles are a good spot. I think you always see players between the NFC East interchange teams. I feel like that's a common theme there. I do believe that we could see Stephon Gilmore in an Eagles uniform just because, you know, they like to go out there and make good splurges on some big players. But nonetheless, I do think the Lions need some cornerback help, and I'm going to say he'll be a Lion next year. I think that's a really good spot for him.
Yeah, and as we get towards March 11th, which is the first day that free agency is allowed, the tampering period, we'll get more and more insight of who's going to go where. But I'd like to transfer over to the NBA now.
Right, so we'll move over to the NBA, and we'll do that, and we'll talk about some of the standings, some players, how our teams are doing, and all that good stuff, you know. So we'll transfer over to that, and we'll be right back.
I'm sure you saw this weekend, Jalen Brunson, that scary injury. What was going through your mind when that injury happened?
Season's over. The Knicks suck. I hate this team. I want to leave New York. I want to go support a different team. Yeah, those are all things that cross my mind, to be honest.
Yeah.
But, you know, can't give up hope yet. He's going to be okay. So.
Yeah, that's. I was watching that game in my living room. My mom and brother, they were making food in the kitchen, and as soon as it happened, they knew not to say anything to me. My hands went right in my face. Even thought about crying a little bit. You know, anger. They knew not to laugh at me. They knew not to say anything. Yeah. Just leave me alone. Let me regather before you bother me. You know what I mean?
Because it looked bad. It didn't look good.
I thought the season was over. I thought he tore something or broke something, and it was going to be a really miserable podcast episode this week if that was the case.
Right, and it looked non-contact, so when you see non-contact, you think for the worst. Although it wasn't non-contact, but by looks of it, when it was happening, like wide shot, like you were like, wow, like he just like tore his ACL, he blew out his knee or something.
Yeah. Especially since when they were helping him off the court, and you could see when he tried to put a little pressure on it, his foot rolled over.
He just folded.
And when you saw that kind of looked like, oh boy, that was the icing on the cake where we thought it was a really serious injury. But we found that it was just a contusion. They'll probably keep him out for a week or a couple days just until he's healthy. But it's good to hear that he's 100%, no structural damage, which is the most important thing.
Right. And you look at how the Knicks are sitting in the standings right now. Obviously, 4 seeds still remaining there, but nonetheless, a lot of teams are within the range. A lot of them within half game range, 1 game range, 1.5 game range, all that good stuff. So obviously, it's coming down to the wire in the East, and you see all these teams starting to figure out where they're going to be seated and stuff. Where do you see like certain teams in the East being seated, like the Knicks, the Pacers, all those teams?
Well, for the Knicks, as long as we get a top 6 seed and we're out of the play-in tournament, that's all that matters to me.
Right.
I don't want to see Boston round 1. Other than that, I'll see any other team round 1. Home court advantage also is a thing. I'd like to go to game 1 at the Garden, first round. Nice. You know, if we don't get game 1, that's fine. That's not the end of the world. We'll just have to. We'll be a lower seed in the playoffs, and we'll have to overtake some higher seeds. Nothing wrong with that. We'll be healthy coming into the playoffs, as long as we're in there.
Right, and obviously, you see, I think the top 3 seeds are starting to solidify a little bit. I don't think there'll be a lot of movement there. I think the Bucks are starting to play better off of the break. I think they're going to remain the 2 seed. I think the Cavs will remain the 3 seed just because they did have that span of games where they won 17 straight.
Out of 18.
Yeah, 15 straight or something like that. So obviously those 3 seeds are solidified, but you move over to the 4 through 8, and that's just up in the air until probably the end of the season. It could change the last day of the season. You never know.
Yeah, that's going to fluctuate throughout the season. We still got about a month left of the season, give or take 4 or 5 weeks. So it's going to still move around. Knicks are going to get some people back from the injury report. Some people were going to get injured. That's just how the NBA works. So teams will get win streaks. They'll hit their strides, and they might go ice cold. It's going to be interesting to see because it's a very tight race from 4 to 8.
Right. And you look at teams that are starting to heat up a little bit. You got teams like the Magic who are heating up a lot, and the Heat who are playing well. So obviously the gap is going to shorten there. I think eventually the 4 and 5 seeds are going to start to push forward more.
Yeah.
And the 6, 7, 8 will start to separate a little bit. But nonetheless, obviously, it would be nice for the Knicks to stay in that 4 seed, get home court advantage, maybe play against a team like, the Joel Embiids of the world, or well, not even that. I mean, they won't even have Joel Embiid, the Sixers. So it would be nice to play against a team that's a 5 seed or a 6 seed and, have home court.
Yeah, so bringing up the standings right in front of me here. Actually, Magic overtake us at the 4th spot.
Wow.
But we play them on Friday. We're tied right now. We got the Heat at 6, we got Philly at 7, and we got the Pacers at 8. All in the matter of a half a game with each other.
That is not a good sight for us.
And the Pacers are a good team too. Halliburton's starting to get healthy from that hamstring injury. They're starting to get the Siakam and Miles Turner starting to get that front court rolling.
Right.
It's an exciting team. They're definitely an exciting team. You got Miami. You can never count them out. Jimmy Butler, Bam. They're a team that's always going to be in the mix. They're a hard team to beat.
Right. And you look at the roster-wise, what the Knicks have that the other teams don't right now, and the only thing you think about is health. Yeah. Realistically, the thing that's going to kill us in this race of getting home court advantage is health. Because you look at all these other teams, and their majority of them are very healthy. So their ending span of the season is going to look a lot different than ours, just because we're fighting to stay in the playoff picture while these teams are fighting for a seed, I believe. I believe it's going to be hard for us to keep in that top 8 seed with injuries like this becoming more current.
Yeah. Listen, Julius Randle's close to returning. He's going to be the first one out of him and Mitch and OG to return, followed by Mitch and then OG. So it's good to see that they're all on the bench. They're all traveling to our games. That means they're very close. We just got to hold on a little bit more. Maybe Brunson plays Friday. Maybe he's good enough to play. I'd like probably for him to sit out at least another game or two, just for precautionary reasons. But you also can't keep him off too long because we need to win games. We can't really afford to lose a lot of games, especially since we're playing Orlando, who is 1 seed above us on Friday.
Right. And you look at the schedule coming up. You got Orlando, then you got Philly back-to-back next week. And those games are 3 games out of 3 games that matter significantly in our season. You think about it, if we drop all 3 of those games, it's very likely that we're going to be sitting in a 7 to 8 seed range.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if we fall out to the 8th seed, there's a big 8 from the 8th to the 9th.
Right.
So at least there's a little bit of an advantage of having the 7th and 8th seed in the play-in tournament from the 9th and 10th. But I just don't want to be in the play-in tournament. I don't want to see Milwaukee, or I don't want to see Boston round 1.
Right. And obviously seeing Milwaukee or Boston round 1 would most likely be a very difficult matchup for the Knicks, regardless of the players, if we're healthy or not. You don't want to see that round 1. You want to have a nice series where you can coast, a 4-1 series win or a 4-2 series win, something like that. But you don't want to be going into 7-game series early on in the playoffs. It's not going to end well for you, I don't think.
Yeah, especially since you got a team coming off injuries. It's more than likely by, April 1st, everyone will be back. So you'd like to see them gain some chemistry, get some basketball back under some feet again. You don't want them to go right into a round 1 against a big team like that. You like a round 1 against a little lighter team. This way we could, get to breathing again and get used to shooting the basketball again.
And I think the ideal thing would be for the Knicks is if the Knicks did drop, which would not be ideal, but ideally for them, if the Cavs can move into the 2 seed, I really like their matchup against the Cavs. I do think they match well against the Cavs. I don't think the Cavs are a playoff roster, although they do have a lot of players and a lot of depth. I still don't think I'm convinced that the Cavs are going to be a team that the Knicks have to worry about in the playoffs.
Yeah. Again, Cleveland's another team they caught hot, and maybe it was a little too early. Maybe they did it when was not the right time. Hopefully the Knicks get everyone back and we catch our hot streak in the playoffs.
Right. But, speaking of Cleveland, I know it's a little late to talk about this, but, why not? Josh Hart with a little chain snag. How did you feel about that?
Yeah, that was it's nice to see Josh Hart kind of have his swagger back a little bit.
Right. You've seen that with these guys out, that he's sort of, taking a more predominant role with the ball,
Especially since he was struggling a lot in the first half of the season. He was reluctant to shoot, wasn't the defender he was. So it's nice to see him kind of get that confidence and swagger back, something that we really need for this playoff run.
Right. And now, obviously, Josh Hart heating up all these bench players that the Knicks typically they don't get a lot of minutes, but you look at it come playoff time, it might be beneficial for them to be playing all these minutes, because when you get into the playoff time, you're going to have to play majority of your roster. You think about it, it's not just a starting 5 that's going to win you a championship. You need 8 to 9 guys on a team that are going to put in good minutes and, work hard, play good defensively, and, overall just spread the court very well. So
yeah, and the other thing about the playoffs is it's a lot about matchups. It's about who you're playing against, what teams you're playing against. So the fact that the Knicks have a lot of bench depth, and they have some guys that might play some series. Jericho Sims might, they might need a three-man big rotation in the playoffs. They might need Alec Burks and McBride to get more minutes, depending on whatever team they're playing. So it's good that a majority of our roster got a lot of playing time. So we could fluctuate, and Thibodeau can make a game plan to these teams that we're playing against, and he's got a few players to choose from instead of, our same old 9 or 10 players. He could extend the bench a little bit.
Right. And you look at, the playoff picture, and let me get a little hot take maybe from you about, is there one team that you think that might be like in the playoff picture, but you don't think they're fit for playoff basketball?
I think that's Cleveland. I think that team is Cleveland. A little showed last year. They're playing good regular season ball this year. But again, you got 2 small guards. You got Garland and Mitchell. It's hard to play defense in the playoffs when you have 2 small guards like that. That's why I was afraid of Donovan Mitchell coming to New York to pair with Brunson.
Defensively,
you don't want 2 small guards like that in the playoffs. Teams in the half court, when you play half court basketball, teams will really take advantage of that. That's something that the Knicks obviously took advantage of with Cleveland as well. And they don't have a dominant big man. They have Jared Allen, they have Mobley, but none of these guys are dominant. They're not big bodies inside.
Right.
Mobley's more of a stretch guy, and Mitchell Robinson dominated Jared Allen last year.
Right. And I'm going to come out here with a really hot take that a lot of people aren't going to agree with, and it might be outrageous, but I don't think Boston's fit for a 7-game series. Now, don't get me wrong, against a scrub team, you say, yeah, why not? But then you look at their gameplay. It's not even about their roster mainly. It's about how they play the game. I think you start to figure them out after 2 to 3 games. So if you let Boston win the first 2 to 3 games, obviously you're in a bad spot. But if you do find a way to, pull out a win in one of those games, and you're in a 2-1 spot where you have a chance of coming back, I think you start to figure Boston out a little bit, just because they play a lot of solo basketball. They don't really have a big plan. They play very simple basketball, and they like to isolate Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and they like to run pick and roll with Kristaps Porzingis. I think that defensively, if you have a team that can figure that out, I think Boston's going to be a really easy team to shut down. Although, nonetheless, it's Boston. So, but yeah, that is one of my hot takes.
Yeah, I gotta strongly disagree with you right there. I think Boston is running away with this thing, and everyone else is chasing them. You can't figure them out. And even if you try to figure them out, they have too many good players to where you could only play so much of good defense. You could only have so much of a game plan. These guys are going to hit shots right in your face. Porzingis is playing. He's a top 10 MVP candidate this year. They got Tatum and they got Porzingis, 2 guys in the top 10 MVP race. Porzingis is playing his best basketball since New York. You got Jaylen Brown, obviously, who's no scrub. You got Al Horford and Derek White, good role players. Peyton Pritchard's playing well. We got our boy Sam Hauser shooting threes. Scrub. I didn't even say Drew Holiday. This team is built for a playoff run. And if the Knicks don't get it together, I don't see the Bucks beating this team. I think the Knicks have the best chance of beating this team. Even out west, I like the Nuggets. I like Jokic, but I think between Horford and Porzingis, Jokic might have a tough time in a 7-game series.
I agree with that. I do think if it does get to that point where you see the Celtics versus a team in the West, I don't really think there's a team in the West that's going to compete with the Celtics to that extent. I think the best chance of beating the Celtics is a team that knows the Celtics. And you look at teams that know the Celtics, you got the Knicks, you got the Bucks. I do think that if any team is going to take down the Celtics in a playoff series, it's going to be the Knicks or the Bucks. I think that's their only chance at getting taken out, and I don't think it's going to be the Bucks. Like you said, I think it's going to be the Knicks. If they can take them down, we'll have to wait and see about that. But
I think if Philly's fully healthy, they have a chance too.
Yeah, I mean, Philly did have some. Philly did beat them in a series before. They did.
And I think Philly beat them earlier this year too.
You're right.
Embiid is.
It's going to be all about Embiid.
He's unstoppable.
Right.
And I like Porzingis, I like Horford, but they just don't have the physicality to bang down low with Embiid. And Jokic is more of a finesse guy. He shoots, but he could go down low too. He does everything. Porzingis is the difference maker on that team.
Right, and also we didn't talk about
the difference maker.
Talk about the Heat. They haven't beat the Heat. The Heat are another problem for them too. You think about it. In playoff series in the past, the Heat have been a problem for them, whether or not they beat them or not.
Not this year. I don't think they're a problem this year. I think, compared to the Celtics, I don't think the Heat are any threatening to the Celtics than any other team out there. They lost some players from the last time they were able to beat Boston.
Right.
They don't have that roster, I think, for a playoff run. They're top stacked. They got Harrow, they got Butler, they got Bam. You got an aging Kevin Love there. I'm not a fan of Rozier, really. So, you got a bunch of iffy pieces around them.
Right. And I do think that, obviously, the Heat play a similar kind of basketball to the Celtics, but I think at a lot worse level than the Celtics.
Yeah, it's also they play more physical.
Right.
Miami's, they're very physical. They play with heart.
And I think that's something that the Celtics are missing. I feel like that is one thing that, compared the Celtics to the Knicks, the Sixers, the Heat, all three of those teams play a lot more physical, but the Celtics play prettier basketball.
Yeah, the Celtics aren't the most physical team in the league, but they could still get physical with some teams. Right. Maybe Porzingis is not the most physical, but Drew Holiday is one of the best defending point guards there is out there. On the perimeter, it really doesn't get better defensive-wise than Drew Holiday. And it's adding an element to this team that they've really been missing.
Right. And obviously, that is something that we'll have to talk about as the season progresses further and further, as we see the seeds start to pan out in the Eastern Conference. But with that being said, George, it's been a pleasure today. I'm Brandon Miller.
And I'm George Gallo.
And this is the Mecca Sports Podcast. Thank you guys so much. See you guys next time.
Thank you.